So this is episode 9, I think. I've made 9 of these already. That's pretty crazy.
Really?
Kind of.
I didn't realize it's gone that quick, to be honest.
Yes. So we decided on watching a film I guess some people probably know about. It's a bit of a cult classic.
Not even just because of the film, but the video game too, probably.
Oh yeah, that's true. The Warriors from 1979, and the video game I'm going to guess is early 2000s.
It's a pretty good game, actually. I was playing it the other day. It kind of holds up, to be honest.
Oh, no doubt. We'll definitely dive into that in a bit. But yeah, I guess to sort of briefly summarize, it's essentially a gang film about multiple gangs. It follows the Warriors, which is where the title comes from. And essentially it's them trying to get back to their home turf through rival gang territories in New York City in the 70s.
Yeah, it was initially supposed to be some sort of dystopian future, but still grounded somewhat realistically, so it's not just, ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that's something I'd always remembered from it, and I was curious when I rewatched to see if I would have the same opinion, which I did, which was it's an interesting blend of realism and almost fantasy. Not quite like a fairy tale type, but what I mean by that is it's sort of set in a very grounded place, kind of looks like aesthetically, it's almost like a documentary, kind of. Like It's not very stylized visually, but the color and the kind of creativity comes in the different gangs, their colorful outfits or wacky sort of weapons they have or names. And that kind of gives it a bit of the fantastical to it.
I think that's what everybody generally remembers from the game, the movie as well, is just how they all look, and people, I think, have their favorite gangs and stuff. Usually the Warriors, obviously, but
that was kind of the effect that the director was going for. Because I was curious to see what his sort of idea was, and he pretty much said when he read the novel, it's of course based off a novel from the 60s, so a decade earlier. He thought the whole premise was silly, and that the author of that work didn't actually get how silly it was. When I say silly, not in the sense of there's nothing to it, just more sort of it's a bit ludicrous the way that author had written the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why there's kind of a sense of wackiness about it almost. Not quite a comedy, but just...
The book is very different to the movie, in the sense that in the book, they're not even adults, and they're all kind of actually in a family, from what I've heard. But it's also much more graphic.
That's an interesting sort of segue. I guess we'll kind of just jump around before we dive deep into the film itself. But something I was surprised about, because I wanted to do a bit of background reading, it's interesting you mentioned the graphic thing, is a lot of critics at the time were not really with it in terms of the violence. There was someone who was quoted as saying violence for the sake of violence. And I didn't get that at all watching this film.
I guess you have to remember it was 1979.
Yeah, but even still, Godfather 1 had come out in 72. That's gorier than this film. Even its sequel.
Yeah.
And
but the thing is, the story, I think the story kind of revolves around just gang violence. Whereas the Godfather the story doesn't really revolve around violence. It just, violence, happens during the story.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense? I mean, I don't really care for what critics say anyway. Most of them are wrong most of the time.
Oh, for sure. Even be that as it may, it was interesting when I went through the film, the only real sort of horrible, violent things are more words in terms of what could happen potentially. So there's a big scene at the beginning of the film. This guy called Cyrus wants to unite all the different disparate gangs that are all kind of split across New York. And he said, we could take over and run the city. That's that's a bit kind of but that doesn't come to fruition because he gets shot. And then there's also the Warriors hint at raping the main female protagonist at one point.
Which in the book they actually do. Very wise decision not to go forward with that in the movie.
Yeah, because otherwise most of the real violent action that happens is more or less self-defense.
Well, yeah, it is, though, because they're just trying to get back to their turf.
Yeah,
but they don't want to, I guess they don't want to lose street cred by taking off their colors, so they kind of end up having to endure the violence from other gangs.
And of course, that violence comes about because during this big meeting that I referred to, where all the gangs are there, it's a truce, so anyone can cross through any territory to get there. But when this person's shot, they're immediately blamed as being the perpetrators and bringing a gun in an area where guns were not allowed. So it kind of becomes an interesting fight or flight from that point on.
What's the guy's name who shoots the guy again?
I can't remember. I can't remember. I don't know if his name's mentioned. Yeah, they don't name a lot of people. I only remember Swan. I remember, granted, I just watched it recently, but there's Swan, there's Ajax, Cyrus, and Cleon, who's the Warriors' original leader. But he gets killed quite quickly.
Gets elbowed to death, doesn't he?
It was a little comical, it felt like a Monty Python skit almost, like elbow of death type thing. I mean, I'm sure that would have worked. It's like 100 guys doing it on him, and he has no armor on, but it was still a bit kind of like, I did smoke.
Some other moves in there to I don't know.
Yeah.
Make it a bit more serious. Oh my god, look, there's just 20 guys elbowing one guy while he's on the ground, mind you.
Yeah, and I mean, you could probably argue maybe he had they very slowly walk up to him. You could argue he probably had some time to run the fuck away, but
yeah, but he decides to try and fight all of them. I don't know.
But I mean, look, that sort of sets the stage for one of the internal dramas, which I really loved, was so Swan kind of takes charge to lead his kin home, his clan, his group of warriors. But obviously he comes sort of in conflict with Ajax, who's sort of the classic aggressive.
Raphael to Leonardo from the Ninja Turtles, where he's like, I'm going to be the leader. Why do you get to be the leader? Pretty much exactly like that.
It's a classic sort of formula that always works. Swan's very kind of diplomatic, or when they come across gangs like, what are they called? The Orphans.
Orphans are the first gang that they find.
Yeah, everything's pretty chill, but, Ajax has kind of got a bone to pick, I want to be the chief. I don't think we should be pussies, I mean, he uses another slur that I don't think we'll repeat for YouTube friendly. He uses it quite a lot. This time around, I always preferred Swan over Ajax. I guess because he's the main character. But
you like Ajax all this time?
I liked his performance more because he kind of comes off as this macho chap. But there was this really great little, the actor did this really wonderful thing with his eyes in 2 scenes that showed that he was actually quite a very vulnerable type of character. He's like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be aggressive. So there's a famous sequence where he confronts a baseball fury they're dressed in baseball gear, wear clown makeup, and have bats. And he says, he'll shove that bat up the guy's ass, turn him into a popsicle. But just as the guy gets his bat, there's a music sting, and you see his eyes, Ajax's eyes, move ever so slightly towards the bat, and there's this little moment of fear where he's like, oh, fuck.
Do I have this?
Yeah, which is fantastic. And the same thing happens again when he meets a lovely lady in the park who turns out to be an undercover cop and sort of entraps him, arrests him.
I was actually going to ask you, would that legally be considered entrapment?
I think it would be, yeah.
Because she, even though, he had the intention to do so before, her wording in the situation is she's enticing him sexually rather than just being a vulnerable person sitting in the park.
I'm pretty sure that is entrapment, so it is a bit dodgy. We know what he was going to do, but she did encourage
that result rather than just letting it happen naturally.
Because it's always a possibility, I guess, that maybe his friends would come back in time to stop him. But even then, when he's handcuffed, he's like, "Hey, come on, lady." He's aggressive, but then there's that moment of flicker in his eyes. And I'm like, damn, I never gave this actor enough credit.
Well, funny you mention him as an actor because he is probably the most successful guy out of this movie. He hasn't played many huge roles, but he has in the past. He played Raiden in that second Mortal Kombat movie after the original one released, which I know isn't an astounding movie or career choice for him, but There you go. He's played a few, some other characters in some other movies, as opposed to pretty much everybody else who never really did anything else. And the other actor who kind of had other roles was Fox, the guy who gets run over by the train.
Mm-hmm.
He was in The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh, yes, that's right, he was. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that sequence where he's run over by the train was actually not
him
intended.
Nope. But he had a falling out with the director.
Yeah.
So they were like, we're going to kill this character off because he wasn't going to come back to set.
Which is interesting to me, because as I watch the film, it actually works, because he's the one who witnesses the actual killer that kills Cyrus.
Yeah,
I thought, that's a bizarre coincidence that the one man who could clear his clan or group happens to be played by someone that the director didn't get along with and said, we'll just kill him when we can, fuck him.
I wonder if that actually changed the ending at all. And if they had to rewrite the ending quickly to be like, oh shit, the guy that was going to be like, hey, that guy shot him is gone.
Possibly, because I think the Riffs are the name of Cyrus's gang, I believe.
Yes, the Riffs.
When there's just a random scene at the end, which is like a Deus Ex Machina type thing, where one of the underlings to the boss goes, oh, hey, we found someone who said they saw who shot Cyrus. And then it just sort of cuts to pretty much the ending. And then everything's sort of resolved.
I guess when you take into account that real life stuff, it's like that. I also wanted to mention the game sort of like, I don't know if the game is canon or not. I don't think it really matters, considering it's a two media, franchise. There's like two things of it. So
yeah.
But originally Vermin. So Vermin, I don't know if you ever really say his name in the movie, but he's the one. So they, the female gang, the three guys that go and get attacked by the female gang.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them is Cochise, which I'm sure you can guess which one that is, because the guy with the white guy with the afro is Rembrandt, and the other one is Vermin.
Uh-huh.
And Vermin was actually supposed to be the leader after Cleon dies, because they were previously in a different gang before they formed the Warriors together.
Interesting, yeah. So yeah, I did do a little background on the game. It sounds fun, and definitely I would love to play a version of it at some point in the future. So it's essentially a prequel, and then the final chapter is the film, basically, or the film's plot, if I've got that right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's not much content of the film to make a full game about.
Yeah.
Especially for 2005 standards.
I do know that the actor who played Cyrus, I think, filed a lawsuit against Rockstar, or their parent company, Take-Two, because of his likeness or his voice being used for Cyrus in the game.
Can you count suckers? You
didn't correctly license it, although I couldn't find information on what happened to it, if it ended, or if there was probably a settlement or something, or if it got laughed out of court. But I think the idea was, well, you've given your voice to the film, and they're going to reprint the film or release a Blu-ray.
The film for the game.
And then they licensed it to us, so...
It's not you who's emulating, it's the character.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. I think Ajax might be one of my favorite. Him and Swan as well, I think.
Yeah.
The two best ones.
That would definitely be a criticism, and I'm sure maybe for you it's not as bad because you've obviously got the game as context, but beyond those two characters, there's not really a lot with the rest of them. Like, they're very distinct how they look, but they don't really have a distinct character, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Even in the game, most of the time, the most you get is like a mission for when they first got... They all each have to go into a mission to earn their jacket, being fully initiated, and you play that mission, and it's you find out how they became a warrior and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not surprised if I found a top 5 characters list. It would probably be, Cyrus, Ajax, Swan, maybe even Cleon. Like, that actor, even though he's only in it for like flashback scenes and then the comical kind of elbow death.
He has some of the most lines when they're gearing up to go, and he's kind of interviewing each of them. He's like, what I mean? Like,
great little performances in this cult film. Like, just even Cyrus, you see him for the one thing, just the way everyone reveres him and the way he acts. he's almost like a Christ-like figure, how he sort of uses his body and all that. But it's just quite powerful for like a 1 minute scene where you're like, oh, I totally get this guy, and he's dead, and he's one of the most memorable bits from the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Most of the warriors are pretty not non-existent. Although I do find one thing interesting with Rembrandt is that when he goes to the Lizzies with the other two guys, and they're all like getting down with the girls and stuff, he's sitting there awkwardly. So I'm assuming that was meant to insinuate that he's gay.
Yeah, I got that vibe as well.
Was also gay. He passed away very young. Actually, I think he passed away in the 80s or 90s.
Oh.
Might have even been due to HIV or AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm correct about that. If not, I apologize, but I think I read that somewhere.
But yeah, no, I was definitely getting that vibe too, just the way he was so uncomfortable. I'll be honest with you, that scene, it's pretty good, but I do feel like the Lizzies were acting needlessly. That's the name of the female crew, I think, Lizzies.
Yeah, the Lizzies.
They were acting needlessly sus. Like, when they bring them in initially, like, oh, the Warriors, we know you. And they're all like, what? How?
Yeah, that's a pretty
They didn't have to say any of that stuff. And then, like, 10 seconds before they pull out their guns or anything, like, you're the guys who shot Cyrus, eh? And then they get out their stuff and then they try to kill them. It's like, just kill them. You know what I mean?
I mean, that could be shown for every gang in the movie, though. Like, just fucking kill them, man. Like the roller skate, the punks, the guys roller skating after them.
That's also a great scene, but it's kind of a bit wacky how they just retreat to the men's room and all the roller skate punks are like, oh, okay, let's go there. And then they still somehow get jumped by the Warriors. They're like surprised, even though they know they're in the cubicles. Like, oh shit!
I mean, that is a really good action scene. To be honest, though, I do love that scene.
Yeah, I think that's the one sequence, not the exterior, so in the actual train station, but the bathroom, I believe, was the only set in the movie, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Because they had to destroy it.
Yeah. Although, I mean, if it's New York in the 70s...
chances are they're already destroyed.
Bathroom's already destroyed, yeah, I can't go there. Speaking of, I also found out that there were actual gangs used as extras in the opening sequence. Yeah. And they also did fuck around with the crew from time to time. Because, they would see these people dressed in these jackets with insignia.
Yeah.
I do wonder if it's exaggerated from, the director or surviving actors, just to sort of sell the myth of the filmmaking a bit more. Some people would do that, but that would be pretty spooky. New York in the 70s and early 80s was not a very safe space at all.
Nope.
Something else I thought was interesting that I never picked up on is obviously whenever the Warriors encounter a gang and that gang gives chase to them, chases them, there's this sort of dark synth music that's kind of playing in the background that kind of builds the tension. What was interesting, I don't know if you noticed this, but it never played with police chasing them.
Right.
That seemed very deliberate to me, and the only thing I could think of at the time was, well, the music is kind of like ominous. So I think maybe what they were going for there was, well, the police, what's going to happen? They'll just get arrested and bailed out. But there's real consequence to if they get captured by any of these gangs. So that's the only thing I could justify. But I did think that was a nice idea on the director's part or whoever to do that.
I love the music in that movie, actually. I bought the whole soundtrack. Joe Walsh from the Eagles did a song for this. 2 songs, I think, Somewhere out on that horizon. That's called In the City. I think that plays during the end credits. That's a really good song. And not him, but a song called Last of an Ancient Breed is another good one.
Yeah, no, it's a very good soundtrack. I think another interesting thing I noticed, and this was after you told me that this film was kind of not only based off a novel, but also inspired by ancient Greek tale, I think. Abbassids or something? I can't remember what it's called. Abides? I don't know the name of it. It's basically a story about this guy who was called Cyrus, who challenges his brother to a throne in Persia, but he's killed. And so all his Greek legions are like, fuck, we got to get home now. And there's 10,000 men, and they've battle tribes as they get home. So you can see already the pattern, story pattern's similar. And it's mentioned in the novel that The Warriors is based on, but the novel itself, like, isn't based on that story. It kind of just, like, references that story. Like a character reads a comic book about it or something. And I guess Walter Hill, the director, said, oh, maybe we can work off that a bit more. But I bring that up because one thing in the Greek epics that I've read, that I've noticed, is this sort of theme of how women, when they're introduced in the story, or if they're pivotal in a story, generally like symbolize chaos of some kind. So what I mean by that is like, there's this. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I'll come back to the Warriors. But there's this book I read called The Iliad. It's one of the oldest known bits of literature by a guy called Homer, whose name will forever be tainted by the Simpsons character, who I guess is
Homer Simpson,
based on him. I mean, I guess that's a funny gag, is like this dumb idiot has the same name as one of the biggest historical geniuses of all time in terms of writing poems. But in that book, basically, there's this massive war that's happening over the span of 10 years, and it's all over a woman who left one man for another, essentially. And whenever women are involved in the story, like, oh, my booty's gone, which includes, sex slaves or whatever, sort of camaraderie breaks down and logic kind of breaks down a bit. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but basically I bring that up because...
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, in this film, I noticed every female character that wasn't like a background character was introduced in such a way that they kind of fucked up someone's plans. So there's the female love interest with Swan, where she's introduced. So they're negotiating a peace with the orphans to get past their territory, and they're like, okay, that's cool. And she comes out and starts wreaking havoc and saying, oh...
Well, she's like, oh, you guys are pussies.
Yeah.
She like taunts them, like them saying, you guys are nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And then that causes a fight. Then there's also the lady cop, as we mentioned, who, brings in Ajax. And then there's also the Lizzies, who act like sirens from the Odyssey, basically like luring people away from their journey to kill them.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting little pattern, how there wasn't really a single female character. Or whenever one was introduced, it would kind of fuck with plans. Like, okay, this is what we're doing. Oh no, now everything's sort of in chaos. That might be me reading way too much into it. Here's something. Have you ever seen the 2005 director's cut, or I don't know what they call it, but he edited it so that the film was broken into chapters, and yeah, it would be comic book panels. Have you ever seen that? What do you think of it?
I don't know. It was kind of striking. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it particularly added anything to the movie either, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah, that one, I would be interested to track that down. There's certainly a pulpy feel to the movie, but I wouldn't really say it feels like it's told in a way or shot in a way that feels like a comic book. So I feel like that might be distracting for me.
I mean, it's interesting for sure, but I don't know. As I said, I don't know if it really adds anything to the film. I don't know if it takes anything away particularly either.
No, I think overall it's a pretty good film. I think we've covered a fair bit. I guess, do you have a favourite scene or sequence or line?
I don't really know if I have a favourite scene or sequence. I think maybe the bathroom fight might be mine, or any of the times where they kind of all stop and like they have to fight.
I quite like the first one of the gang encounters they have with the skinheads, the multiracial skinheads that they are. Just sort of how that's set up, where they kind of, it's just all completely empty underpass under the train, and they just sort of appear out of nowhere on the tractor. Like, just that build up is really great, and the chase that kind of happens after that too. Otherwise, yeah, the Furies, anything with the baseball Furies is pretty fun.
I think that's everybody's favourite gang.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the most distinct and iconic, for sure. Like, because it's just a bizarre mash of face paint and baseballs, whereas other gangs kind of like, it might just be a different sort of suit colour or vest colour. The Orphans, of course, are just t-shirts and jeans.
Yeah, they are. I guess because they're meant to be like or something.
I guess as one last thing, I quite liked the disc jockey DJ chick who's sort of just there giving updates to everyone. I thought that was a creative way to kind of explain how, gangs are on the lookout for them, and that there's this whole underground radio network where they're sending cryptic messages on the airwaves so gangs will understand what's happening, but police won't have any clue. Like, that was just a fun little world building thing. Definitely makes it distinct as well. Yeah, I think we covered all of. I think we had a nice deep dive into that. We covered kind of everything we wanted to. For me personally, I guess if I gave it a rating, it would probably be in the 4-star range. I do think there's a few little silly bits and pieces here and there with the plot or story towards the end. Like the Lizzie's thing I mentioned, where it's sort of they could have easily just killed them there, but they kind of just fucked it like idiots.
That's like most movies, though. There's always going to be some.
Yeah, and it might be me just sort of trying to find an excuse to criticize the movie, because you always have to be cautious when you just say you love this, love this, love this. But that's pretty much me watching the film, and it's like I was invested and I was watching it on a mobile phone as well, So to be enthralled for 90 minutes on that kind of device, like, definitely is a testament to the filmmaker 40 plus years on.
Yeah, I can't even watch my favorite movies on fire most of the time.
How about yourself? Where would you put this one? You have to give it a rating.
I was going to say it's actually arguably like one of my favorite movies of all time. Maybe even my favorite movie, to be honest.
Is there anything else we wanted to chat about?
No, I think I've got all of my choice for that. So I would leave with that.
Excellent. Because I was wondering, separate to that as a different topic, if we wanted to bring up Hotline Miami real quick. But I guess I'll speak on our behalfs and say, fun enough game, unnecessarily hard, and quite unfair. I don't think either of us like games that are hard because you can't fucking see half the map.
I don't even really like games that are hard anymore, just because, like, I like games that I can just jump on when I have free moment, play the hell out of it, get through it a bit, and
Well, for us, as we've grown up, it's a lot more of a leisurely activity. Like, you've had a long day at work, I just want to, jump on some Goombas for half an hour or an hour.
Yeah, man. Speaking of Mario, I'm playing. I bought you remember Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U?
Yep.
So they put out a remake of it for the Switch with a whole another side game called Bowser's Fury, and it is really, really good, man. It's got all the mechanics of 3D World, but it's like mixed. It's like a completely open world with like 100 shines to collect. So it is really, really good.
Nice. I have to, controversial opinion, but I've never been big into like the main stream of Mario games, like the platform ones. Ironically, I've always enjoyed the party games. As you know, the racing games, so the Mario Kart games or the Smash Bros. Spin-offs, which are, I guess, all Nintendo, but, the title's sort of alluding most to Mario.
The other cool thing about you mentioning party games is that they're releasing a Mario Party game on the Switch soon, which is just a collection of the 100 best Mario Party minigames.
I take it most people who play that game, who are like fans or play it religiously, probably enjoy the minigame aspect the most. I've always loved the board game part, personally.
I like both, but people do love the board game part, Jack. Don't get them wrong, because lately, in the most recent games, except for like Super Mario Party, which is the one that just came out with, it's they got rid of the board game aspect, and people fucking hate them, man. They despise those games because they suck. They do. You're just in a cart. Like, all of your rolls count for everybody. I guess I tried something new, but
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But like, you don't stick to that formula going forward if it sucks.
They did for like 2 or 3 games.
Oof.
And even the new one where they went back to the board games, the boards are like maybe a third or a quarter the size of like the classic boards. and they have no gimmicks to the whole thing. So it's like, I don't know. I just think it was a big mistake on that part.
That might have been maybe that was an issue of like, because those games can be really long with the board games. Maybe they were just thinking, well, how do we speed things up so they get to the fun mini games? But I feel like you could just fix that by like capping the number of turns or having smaller boards or larger boards, right? In terms of how long it takes to make a turn. I don't know.
Well, you can also like just say like a 5-turn game. Not that a lot of stuff would happen.
Or just play the mini games, which I think you could do in most Mario Party games. Like you couldn't. It's not like you could only access them through the main sort of board games.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking, to be honest with you, man. Big misstep on their part.
They don't often make missteps, though, do they, Nintendo? For the most part,
they're my favorite game company, to be honest with you.
They've definitely earned it. They know their audience, they know what works, but they still kind of diversify a bit when it comes to new iterations of IPs. Like they do add enough little tricks. Yeah.
Well, their consoles are gimmicky now, which is good though, in my opinion. Like, the whole the Switch being not just the home console, but a handheld, and now there's like a couple of versions of it with one handheld, one.
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff.
No, and they've just got a solid number of IPs that can kind of grow a bit. I think an issue that Microsoft especially, but maybe Sony as well, have is with their main exclusives, those were kind of like very self-contained in terms of like, so you've got Halo, right? 1, 2, 3, done, that story sort of done. Obviously that's a universe you can expand on in different media, but as far as games are, like, it is kind of tricky to then jump to a new sort of trilogy when everything's kind of been concluded. I wonder if that might have partially fucked that series over. And also Gears of War was kind of like quite self-contained, 1, 2, 3. And I don't think people have cared as much for like the add-ons when the main big bad is kind of been defeated.
To be honest, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not even excited for the new Halo. You know, they put out a gameplay demo of Infinite. It took them about 14 hours after they said they were going to put the game, the 3-month-old build out.
Yeah.
For the people who, like, it was a very exclusive release, by the way, and they didn't even put it out. 14 hours too late.
I mean, look, I'm not interested in a Halo Infinite game. I am interested in a documentary about how much of a shit show the behind the scenes for making Halo Infinite is, though.
It's the most expensive game ever made, man. How are they? I don't know, man.
Yeah, no, I told my dad, how much did it cost again? You told me, and I told him, and he was just like shaking his head.
$500 million, you sure?
Yeah, that's insane. Like most big blockbuster movies don't even come into that ballpark normally. I mean, yeah, even factoring in like advertising, I don't think they would shoot above that or around that. It'd be a little under. That's crazy. You could probably see why Microsoft are going multi-platform now, or at least porting it to PC, trying to recoup losses perhaps. Wow.
They are doing the wrong things. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Doing the wrong things, doing them constantly. But to put that much money, this is what baffles me. The franchise has been hated since 343 took over with 4 million. So why then decide the ending to the trilogy that none of the original players who are still passionate about like the franchise because they want it to be good.
Yeah.
You know, why sink that much money into it? I mean, if you put that much money into it and said, hey, Bungie, you want to come back and make a Halo game? Maybe then first of all, maybe then it would be good. Of course, Bungie wouldn't do it because they'd be like, well, fuck you. But, you know, they're making Diamond and Pearl remakes.
Oh. I mean, those have been okay, haven't they, for the most part?
Well, the thing is, it's not like the other remakes. It's actually just like a more refined art style version of the original Diamond and Pearl. So it's like OG Pokemon, where it's top down and stuff.
Okay. Would you have liked if they had modernized it, so to speak, or are you happy that it's just sort of like
the newer games?
Yeah.
I'm kind of keen to see what they do with this. I'm hoping they still change up some stuff about it, so it's not a note for note replay.
I'm sure there'd be additional content like after the main story, kind of like the Tycoon Tower stuff, but maybe a bit more. I'm not sure.
I'm hoping they just change up the gyms or like just the story a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll add some Pokemon in it as well. Didn't that game also have a character called Cyrus?
Yeah, he was the leader of Team Galactic, actually.
Damn. Look at all the connections we're making today.
Full circle.
Hmm.
That must be the note to end it on, I think.
I guess as a quick question, what would be something related to the Warriors?
If you're a fan of the franchise, do you like the movie or the game better?
Oh, that's a good one. Do you have an answer for that?
No, to be honest. I'll say probably the movie because I don't have to sit there and play it. But if I was playing, if I had two people playing the game, the game. But if I'm on my own, the movie.
Just the time you have to invest.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. No, that's a good answer. But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or not. But do leave your thoughts there, because then we'll know what they are.
Alrighty.
Yeah. Have a good.
Day/night.
Yes. Damn, he beat me to it. You stole my line.
What are you gonna do? Shoot me and then have a really obnoxiously whiny voice for an hour and 30 minutes?
Exactly. But yeah, goodbye, everyone.
So, yeah.